I'm here with Anne Lamott, author of New York Times bestsellers Grace Eventually, Plan B, Traveling Mercies, and Operating Instructions, as well as 7 novels, including Rosie and the Crooked Little Heart. She is also a past recipient of the Guggenheim Fellowship. Anne choreographed and wrote the introduction for our recently introduced book, Buechner 101, An Introduction to Frederick Buechner. Thank you so much, Anne, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
As you know, Frederick Buechner will soon be turning 90 years old. Is there anything you would like to wish him for this great milestone?
I just want to wish him continued blessing and love and good health and some more good time on this funny blue marble before he crosses over to glory.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure Mr. Buechner will greatly appreciate hearing from you. Can you tell me how you first learned about his work?
I had seen snippets of his work when I was in my 30s, but when I was 31, I staggered into a Episcopal priest's office at the very end of my rope with drinking and using, and I didn't know this person, and he sat with me and heard me and put some loving energy on me, and then he handed me a Buechner book, and for the life of me can't remember which it was, but he said, "You need to know about this man." And after that, I just gobbled up everything I could. I started with Godric, but then I read all of the nonfiction, and ever since then, I have just returned to him again and again. I have some sermons on my laptop. I have famous commencement address on my iPad. I retweet him nearly every day. He's just so much a part of my life. He's my brother.
Well, that's a wonderful thing to say, and I'm sure he'll greatly appreciate that. What would you say most attracts you to his writing?
His humanity, the ordinary places he found grace and mercy and hope, not in thunderbolts or sunsets even, or burning bushes, but in tenderness exchanged between one another and in paying attention to your life, listening to your life. I'm also a sucker for great writing, and of course, one of the miracles of his work is that he is equally brilliant as a theologian and a writer, which is very rare.
So you've talked about how he's influenced your life. Has he influenced your career at all?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I think probably he gave me the confidence after listening to my life and paying attention, to have the confidence to share that with my readers, and to trust that that is ultimately all we have to share with one another is our truth in our very own voice.
So you mentioned that you've read quite a few of his books. Are there any in particular that have meant the most to you?
I love Whistling in the Dark. I love Alphabet of Grace. I love the essays on writing. I used to teach a lot, and I always pass those out to my students. I remember mimeographs. I used to mimeograph them and then copy them, and now, of course, I can just send them a file. But his work on writing and his work on the radical decision to be here and in a way that is present and kind and giving as the path to filling up was very much the same message that I feel is the only thing I have to convey to my readers. So in that way, yes. Also, he had such a wonderful sense of humor, and still does, but that was sort of rare with theologians, and it certainly has given me confidence that people are just starved. People are starved in this culture for the truth and for humor, for people not to take themselves so damn seriously. And Frederick certainly modeled that from the first page of his I read.
More broadly speaking, what influence would you say that Mr. Buechner's had on Christianity and the world at large?
Well, he's a beacon. You know, there are very few people to whom we turn for the truth, for a very human, a perfectly imperfect being's interpretation of both Scripture and of Jesus' life and teachings. Kathleen Norris I love, a lot of poets I love, Denise Levertov I love. He's a beacon. I always say lighthouses don't go running all over the island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining, and that's what one does as a writer. I mean, people are so blessed who've heard him preach or teach, but as a reader, he has given us a place to which we can turn when we can't remember what is true and what it all means. And there's so much of the influence in this country is on the far right wing's fundamentalist interpretation of Scripture. And fundamentalism is, in my mind, the single most damaging element on earth, let alone in Christianity.
I realize this next question is tough, but if you were to sum up Fred's work in a few words, what would you say?
I would say it's beautiful, and it's stunning, and it's plain, and it is rich in humanity and the tender heart of one man who lives for and lives with Jesus Christ.
Well, Annie, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to pass along before we finish?
Fred, you are my brother, and I have walked with you for 31 years now with a deep gratitude and a deep ease, because I know that, like you say about Jesus, he sees us in this shockingly clear way, and he sees us as whole, and I know that you see me that way too. And I love you, and as my pastor always says, God bless you good.
Well, Annie, thank you again so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your contribution to Buechner 101. We're very excited.
Awesome, Brian.
We're very excited about that book.
Thank you.